Alright, so welcome back to another video. We are about to wrap up with this series. So all along we've been using a database to hold these applications data. Alright, so if I switch over to the application, this is the data that we've already inputted in it. This data is sitting in an SQLite database. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with that database, just that you would need to find another solution if you want to scale up your project. So in this video, we're going to show you how to configure your application to save its data in a MySQL database instead of an SQLite database. And that SQLite database is the default one. It comes with Django by default. Alright. So today we want to configure our application to be able to save its data in a MySQL database. Alright, so switching over to the steps, we will have to install MySQL on our machine. Okay, so that's the command to do that. And we also have to install some prerequisites and also a workbench, a MySQL workbench. This is not necessary, but if you want to be able to manage your database with a graphical user interface, you might need to install MySQL workbench. And workbench is this application right here. Alright, so this is a MySQL workbench application. I can log into the database. So I'm managing all these databases on my computer with this single application, the MySQL workbench. So if you want to have the same environment, you will need to install a workbench. There are other MySQL management systems like PHPMyAdmin. So any one of them should work fine. Okay, so I'm going to stick with MySQL workbench. Okay, so let's see how that is done. So while installing MySQL server, it will prompt for a username and a password. So that will be the username and the password that you will use when logging in to your database. Like if I click on this local instance, it's asking for a username and a password, right? So I was already logged in, that's why I didn't ask for that username and a password. So I'm going to repeat the steps again. If I click on this username and a password is what you're going to enter at this prompt. Okay, so next is to install MySQL Python and MySQL client. The MySQL Python part might not be necessary. This is usually necessary with the older operating systems. Okay, so with the newer one, just try to install MySQL client. If it works fine, then you're good. So I'm just going to install MySQL client. Next is to create a database in the MySQL server. This is usually called a schema. Alright, so we're gonna create a username and also a password for it. So I'm gonna switch over to Workbench and then enter my credentials. So I'm gonna create a database called stockmgmt. So I'm gonna go to the Add Schema button here and then type the schema name, that is the database name. I'm going to type stockmgmt and I'm going to click apply. Okay, I'm going to click apply again and then close. Alright, so now we have the database. If I click on this refresh and I scroll down, I should be able to see the database here. Okay, but it is currently empty. Alright, so if you look at the tables, it is empty. We don't have any table in it. So next is to create a username and a password that the application will use. This application will use when saving this data in the database or in the table. Okay, and that is this username and a password, my username and my password. So I'm going to click user and privileges and then click add account. I'm going to type the username here, my username, and I'm going to type the password right here and then confirm the password. Make sure you use a very strong password. I'm going to click apply. Alright, so now we have this username here, my username. We want this username to be able to have access to this database. Okay, so I'm going to go to the schema privileges right here, and then click add entry. So if I want this username to be able to have access to all these schemas or all these databases, I'm gonna leave it at all schema, right? So in my case, I want this user to be able to have access to this stock management database and only the stock management database, right? So I'm gonna click select schema. Okay, and I'm selecting the stock MGMT, and then click OK. Alright, so I'm gonna click select all and then click apply. So we're done with the workbench part. So we can now switch over to the application and then configure it to send its data to the database that we created with the username and the password that we just created here. Okay, so that is the next step. So I'm going to configure Django to use MySQL Database instead of SQLite database. Okay, so I'm going to select this and copy it. That's the code that you need to put in the settings file. So I'm going to switch over to the project that we are building. So I'm going to go to the Django project. That's the project name, and I'm going to go to settings.py and then scroll to where I have the database set up. That is right here. So I'm going to select this and comment it, and then paste the new code below it. Alright, so previously it is using a back end of the SQLite tree, but we are configuring to use a MySQL database. So the name of the database will be stockmgmt. The username will be the username we just created. That's the my username and my password. Alright, so make sure these parameters match and then click save. So that's all you needed to do to configure Django to send its data to a MySQL database instead of SQLite tree. Okay, but I'm gonna do one more thing. So right here, if I switch over to the command line, it is saying we have 26 unapplied migrations. Okay, so if I switch over to the application and I expand stock MGMT, then migrations, you can see we have all these migrations waiting to be sent into the database. So I'm gonna remove all of these except the init.py, because these are all the updates that we've been doing to our models.py file. Okay, this file right here, we've been doing some updates and some adjustment to this file, so that created all these migration files. Okay, so the initial one was what we had this originally. Okay, so after that we've been adding some extra fields and adjusting some parameters right here, so it has also been creating all these migration files. So I don't want that to be repeated. I want to have my model sent to the database as it is at this moment. Okay, so with this it will create a table with this code. Okay, so looking at this code, we had our category as a character field, but our model is a foreign key field. So as it is, the migration will create the database with this table. Alright, and then use these scripts to modify them one after the other. So we don't want that to happen, so I'm going to delete all of them except the init.py. so this is the original file that was in it. So I'm going to remove all of these, so I can delete all of these files by right clicking and then selecting delete file, or I can go to containing folder and then select all of them and then hit delete. Okay, so now I'm gonna stop the application and run it again and see how many migrations we have. So this time we have 17 migrations. Okay, so I think that's good. So we're gonna do Python manage.py or manage.py migrate. Okay, so looking through this log, we notice that our table is not created in the database. Okay, I mean the stock table, that is this model right here. Okay, the category and the stock table is not created because we can't find it in this log. And if we switch over to the database management system and I click on the refresh, you can see the tables are now created. Okay, so you can see you have out group, you have out group permission, out permission, but there is nowhere we can find the stock and the category table. So that's because we didn't do make migration. Alright, so that's the command that will take the content of this file and send it to the MySQL server to create the table. So I'm gonna do make migration, and then migrate. So this time you can see create model category and create model stock file is created in migrations folder. Where is migration? Okay, right here you can see we have initial migration, and that will create our category and also the stock table. So I'm gonna now do migrate again, migrate, and that will create those two tables for us. So we can confirm that it's created in the table by refreshing here and then checking if we have those two. So those are the two tables that it created. Okay, so I can switch over to the application and do a test. I'm gonna refresh. Right now all the data that we're seeing is left behind in the SQLi3 database. So if I refresh, everything should be blank. Alright, so let's try to add data. So we don't have any category, so we can switch over to admin and create a category. Alright, so we also have to create a username and a password because everything that we have from this application is left in the MySQLi3 database tables. Okay, so we have to create another super user. Let's try to log in. And then create some categories. Now I can switch over to the side and try to add some data in it. Alright, so now we have added this item in the database. So let's see if this data is reflecting on the workbench. Alright, so I'm gonna go to the category and right click, select row. So right there we have the category. Okay, so that is the category that we created, and I can do the select all from the stock management side or the stock management table. So right there we have the data. Okay, so this is how to configure Django to use MySQL to save its data. Alright, so if you like this video, hit the like button, don't forget to subscribe, and see you in the next video.